A dog and a cat stood in the middle of the road, paws raised like they were begging. People thought it was strange until someone followed them. What she discovered shattered the town and revealed a heartbreaking secret no one could have imagined. It was just after sunrise on Maple Street. The neighborhood was quiet, leaves skittering across sidewalks in the crisp autumn breeze. An elderly woman named Mrs. Parker strolled slowly down the lane, clutching a small grocery bag in one hand and adjusting her scarf with the other. It was her daily routine. Same walk, same time, every morning. But today, something stopped her. In her tracks at the end of the block, near the curb, stood a German Shepherd and a tabby cat. Both were completely still. They weren't chasing each other, barking, or hiding. Instead, they sat side by side, eerily calm, each with their front paws raised together, as if in a silent plea. Like they were begging. Mrs. Parker blinked. Surely she was imagining it. But as she stepped closer, she could see their eyes locked onto hers. The dog's head tilted ever so slightly. The cat's tail twitched once, then froze. They didn't move. They didn't make a sound. They just stared at her, paws held up in quiet desperation. She looked around. No leash, no owner, no noise. Just those two animals, sitting in the middle of the road like statues carved by grief. A chill ran down her spine, not from the wind, but from instinct. Something was wrong, and somehow, she knew they wanted her to follow. Mrs. Parker hesitated on the sidewalk, heart pounding. She wasn't the type to chase stray animals, especially ones behaving so strangely. But something about their eyes held her in place. It wasn't fear. It wasn't aggression. It was sorrow, and something deeper, like they were pleading for her to hurry. Then, the dog stood up. Without barking or growling, it turned and began walking down the side street. The cat followed close behind, glancing back every few steps to make sure she was coming. Mrs. Parker clutched her coat tighter and followed. They led her past backyard fences, through fallen leaves and rusted bicycles, toward the edge of the neighborhood, an overgrown path behind an abandoned house. The kind of place kids dared each other to enter, but no adult ever did. Still, she pressed on. The animals weaved through the underbrush with purpose. They weren't wandering. They weren't lost. They were leading. Finally, the dog stopped in front of an old wooden shed, its door hanging crooked on broken hinges. The cat sat down beside it, eyes unblinking. Mrs. Parker's breath caught in her throat. She stepped forward and slowly pushed the creaking door open. The air inside the shed was colder than outside. Dust floated in the dim light, slicing through broken slats in the walls. Mrs. Parker stepped cautiously inside, heart racing, eyes adjusting to the shadows. Then she saw it and stopped breathing. In the corner, huddled beneath a thin, dirty blanket, were two bodies, a man and a small girl. The man's arm was wrapped protectively around the child, his face pale, eyes closed. The girl was motionless, curled up against his chest, her tiny hand still gripping his shirt. Mrs. Parker dropped to her knees. "Oh my God," the German Shepherd patted forward and nudged the girl's arm gently with his nose. The cat meowed for the first time, soft, urgent, heartbreaking. The man didn't move, but the girl barely stirred. A flutter of breath, shallow but real. Mrs. Parker fumbled for her phone with shaking hands. "Yes, emergency, please. There's a child and a man. I think he's gone." Minutes later, paramedics arrived and confirmed what she feared. The man had passed, likely in his sleep. Cold, hunger, exhaustion. But the girl, she was alive. And according to the responders, it was a miracle she was. The dog and the cat had stayed with them 2 full days. No food, no shelter, just loyalty, and, in the end, it saved her life. Later that evening, in the warmth of the hospital, the story began to unfold. The man was identified as Daniel Reed, a single father who had fallen on impossibly hard times. After losing his job and their apartment, Daniel and his daughter, Lily, had been living out of his car. When the car was towed, they moved into the abandoned shed. No one knew, no one saw, but someone stayed. The dog, named Max, and the cat, Whiskers, were more than pets. They were family, rescued years earlier by Daniel and raised alongside Lily. When everything else was lost, he kept them. Because to Lily, they were home. Daniel had tried to keep his daughter warm, feeding her first, giving her his coat, wrapping her in what little he had left. But the cold was relentless. And so was hunger. Authorities confirmed he had passed sometime during the second night. But the animals stayed. They never left Lily's side, not even when she stopped responding. Not even when the cold set in. They didn't bark. They didn't run. They begged. And in the end, their silent plea brought help. Too late for Daniel. But just in time for Lily. By the next morning, the story had spread like wildfire. Local news stations ran headlines. Dog and cat save abandoned child. Social media lit up with photos of Max and Whiskers sitting loyally beside Lily's hospital bed. Donations flooded in. Blankets, clothes, toys, and money. Strangers offered meals, places to stay, and even permanent homes for the animals. But what touched everyone most was how the town came together. The very shed where Lily was found was cleaned up and turned into a makeshift memorial. Flowers, candles, and hand-drawn notes from neighborhood children covered the steps. One sign read, "Heroes wear fur." The shelter took Max and Whiskers in for temporary care. Vets reported they were malnourished, but healthy and unbelievably loyal. They never once stopped looking for her, one staff member said. Even now, they watch the door like they're waiting for her to return. And she did. Lily, still weak but improving, asked about her dad and her pets. When told they were safe, her eyes filled with tears. Mrs. Parker, who had found them, visited every day. She didn't say much, just sat with Lily, Max, and Whiskers. The town wasn't just reacting. It was healing. Together. Lily's recovery was slow but steady. She spoke little at first, trauma wrapped tightly around her like a blanket, but every time Max or Whiskers entered the room, her face lit up. They curled around her in bed, one at each side, like they were holding her heart together. Mrs. Parker, who had never had children of her own, sat with them every day. She read Lily books, brought her applesauce and warm socks, and stroked Max's ears while telling stories of her late husband who once rescued strays too. Then, one afternoon, Lily looked up and asked, "Can I go home with you?" Tears welled in Mrs. Parker's eyes. She smiled and held Lily's hand. "Yes, sweetheart, if that's what you want." The paperwork was filed within weeks. Social services agreed. There was no better place for Lily. And Max and Whiskers? They were never going anywhere else. They had already chosen their family in a quiet house on Maple Street. Laughter slowly returned. Lily began school. Mrs. Parker made pancakes every Sunday. And Max and Whiskers? They remained side by side, guarding her night after night, never once letting her feel alone. A new beginning had begun. Together, if you were moved by this incredible story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an amazing tale like this. Stay with us for more heartwarming and unbelievable stories.